Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a wife finds out that her husband had been cheating on her with her own mother for 4 years and then finally got the mom pregnant with triplets. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one starts like this. I recommend getting comfortable and maybe grabbing a snack because this is gonna be a long story. I honestly don't even know the best place to start, so I'm gonna give a little background info about my family. My mother had me when she was only 17, so as adults there is not a huge age gap between the two of us. Me being 31 and her being 48 years old at the time of this story taking place. I have one sister who's much younger than me, being only 7 years old. I feel more like an aunt than a big sister, to be honest, but I love her and I am glad that my mom found somebody to marry and have another kid with. She was always really involved in my life growing up, but being young and having to work hard, I know that she missed out on a lot of things with me. With my sister, she gets to have some of those memories as a mom. Don't get me wrong and think that I had a bad childhood or relationship with my mom though. Growing up, she was my best friend and I did not even know that I was missing out on things other kids had. I just knew that I only had one parent and had to get babysat by my grandparents a lot. My stepfather is great, and since I met him when I was about 20 years old, we were able to have a mature adult relationship. Finally, we have my uncle who, while I talk to, does not really get along with my mother. So that is the story when it comes to the three of them. That's not the only family to keep track of with this story though. When I was 23 years old, I fell in love with a man that only 2 years later I married. Then I got pregnant with my first daughter, who was 5 during this story. It felt a little bit weird having a sister that was only 2 years older than my daughter, but it worked with them growing up together almost like cousins. Getting all the free clothing from my mother was also a great bonus. However, then I got pregnant again and my 2-year-old son enters the picture. I was living honestly what I thought was the generic American dream kind of story. Finding young love and having 2 kids in a nice house with a great familial relationship. Everything changed though when my mother announced that she was pregnant again. At 48, I knew that risks were higher, but I really was happy for her. My sister would get a sibling closer in age to her and our slightly odd family could grow even more. Explaining to my daughter that the baby being born would be her aunt or uncle would be a conversation saved for another time. The only person that didn't seem excited about the whole thing was my husband. He was normally the life of the party, so seeing him like that was odd to me. Me? What is wrong? Usually you're the first person to start jumping around. Husband? I just worry because of her age, I guess. I don't want her getting sick or anything. Me, I'm sure the doctors are gonna keep a close eye on everything. Let's just celebrate for now, okay? Husband, I guess so. He still seemed really off, but again, I let it go and we moved on. I could not shake that there was something wrong though, but I had no evidence or reasons to pin it on anything. Just him seeming off. On the other side was my mother, excited and talking non-stop about having another baby, and my stepdad was hoping for a son. Doctors had good hopes for things to come to term, and then after one ultrasound I got a call to come over for some big news. My husband stayed home with the kids and I went over worried that something bad had happened. Me? What did the doctor say? Is the baby okay? Mom, sweetie, calm down. I didn't want to tell you this over the phone because I knew you would be just as shocked as me. The doctor said I'm having triplets. Me, are you serious? How are you feeling? Mom, I'm feeling fine. I'm not gonna look forward to getting huge, but it's gonna be worth it. 3 beautiful babies. I feel blessed. I was happy for her, but also worried and in shock a little bit. Triplets is a lot for anybody to handle, and nobody in our family has even ever had twins. She was crying with joy though and talking about how they were her little miracles and wanted to start thinking of names right away. When I went home and told this news to my husband, I was once again met with an odd reaction. He asked me if she was planning to keep them or not, and I told him that of course she was gonna keep them. He did not even seem shocked by the news, and looking back, he probably already knew about the triplets before I even got to her house that day. Things really heated up when I came home from work early and heard my mom and husband inside the house fighting. The window was open and something told me that I should just listen from outside instead of opening the door. I am glad that I finally started listening to my gut and quietly settled by the window. I was not being a creep if it was my own house, you know. Husband, I just cannot believe you won't even consider it. Mom, I told you that I don't believe in doing that. Plus, I wanna have my babies. Husband, do you have any idea how much 3 babies are gonna cost? I got my own daughter and my son to think about. Mom, I know you don't expect me to just take care of it all myself. Now I told you that I wouldn't say anything, but if you refuse to help me, I don't know why I should help you. Husband, you are totally being unreasonable. You have not even done the testing to know for sure. I'm not just gonna hand over money without any kind of proof. Mom, the proof is that I'm having triplets. The doctor said that it's genetic, and even you said you have triplet cousins. Husband, that's crap. I'm not giving you anything until you get a test done. At this point, I was silently crying as everything was beginning to make sense. My husband was not worried about the health of my mom when it came to her having these kids. It came down to the fact that these were his children and he did not want any part of it. My world was spinning and I couldn't just sit outside by the window any longer. I had no regulation over my emotions and walked through the front door yelling at both of them. I was calling him a piece of crap for cheating on me. For not even bothering to go and find a stranger, but instead doing it with my own mom behind my back. Ruining not only our relationship, but the one between my mom and stepdad as well. And then dragging our kids into this and making it an impossible situation. If these were his kids, that would mean the triplets would be both my children's siblings and aunts and uncles. That he was a horrible piece of crap because I loved him, and instead of talking to me about whatever the issues were, he just found somebody else. And then on top of it all, he was planning on keeping it from me even after the babies were born. Then I moved in on my mother, telling her that she was meant to look out for me and instead helped betray me in the worst way possible. That my stepdad loved her and yet she thought it was a good idea to go after her daughter's husband. They both looked guilty, but I couldn't have cared less and just kept reaming them out for what they had done. Finally, I calmed down enough to ask a question and paused to actually get a response. Me, how long? Husband, honey, listen. Me, don't you dare call me that. How long has this been going on? Mom, you need to understand and let us just explain. Me, answer me now. Husband, technically 4 years, but you've been cheating on me with my own mom for 4 years? We have a 2-year-old together. So you were basically just having an affair with her and then coming home to be with me like nothing happened. How many times have we done it after you got home from her place? Mom, it was not the entire time, it was on and off. Me, and that's supposed to make it better? Do you even feel bad about what you did? About what you are doing to our family? Husband, I was trying to tell her that it might be best not to keep the pregnancy. To let our lives just go back to normal. Me, there is no more normal. You ruined that the moment you decided being with her was a good idea. Screw both of you. I then got into my car and went off to the only other place I could think of, which is my uncle's place. I sobbed at his house for hours while filling him in on the details. He was just as disgusted as I was and told me I could stay with him for as long as I needed to. I was grateful because I knew that I could not be anywhere near my husband or mom during that time. I also called my stepfather because he was the only person I had any respect for and deserved to know that the babies not be his. He was devastated as well and even told me that he might plan to leave my mother, but that he would still always be there for me if I needed him and that he was in my corner. I picked up my kids from school/daycare and brought them with me to my uncle's house. I did not want them seeing me cry or finding out that what was going on. I was gonna try and keep things normal in front of them and told them that I was gonna live with their great uncle and their dad was gonna stay at the house. They'd go back and forth. Obviously the 2-year-old did not understand, but my daughter did and thankfully did not ask too many questions. My phone had been exploding with missed calls and texts, but unless it was about the kids, I refused to talk to my husband. As for my mom, I did not answer her at all. One thing I have to say I'm thankful for is that the affair being for only 4 years meant that at least my sister belonged to my mom and stepfather. I think if I found out my sister was my husband's, I would have thrown up. I couldn't just ignore the situation forever and had to come up with some kind of plan. I wanted first to see once and for all who the father was gonna be and demanded a paternity test. I also contacted a lawyer about drafting divorce papers between me and my husband. I knew that after what he did, I would never be able to forgive him and move on with the marriage. The testing came back and confirmed that the triplets were indeed my husband's. The lawyer having the information told me that the basis for the divorce would be easier since I could use his infidelity. I was also asking for full custody of the children because I honestly did not trust him with them. I would of course let him have visitation and see his kids, but I wanted the custody. It did not feel like enough for me though, and I wanted to get some revenge on them for what they had done to me. It did not feel like things were even and I was gonna ruin their lives now. I started first with my mom and ruined most relationships she had with people. She had a big presence in our church and most of her friends belonged to it and were just as devout as her. Me slipping out the information about who the father really was caused a huge problem. Nobody wanted to be associated with her and they all found her to be disgusting. Just like that, the main support she had left was gone. It even spread back to her job what happened, and she was now the focus of all the gossip until it got up to her boss. She was not able to be fired because if you fire the pregnant lady, there's gonna be a bunch of problems. She had her contract up in a year though and was told basically that they were not gonna look to renew it. The entire time she was calling me and switching back and forth between wanting my forgiveness and blaming me for everything. In her mind, I had no right to tell my stepfather and her marriage being ruined was somehow my fault. I told her that it was her fault for cheating and she deserved everything that happened to her because of it. Then she would call sometimes telling me how she loved me and made a horrible mistake. That she wanted me back in my life and that we could work things out and be a family again. I refused to meet with her and talk because I had said everything I really had to that day I found out. As for my husband, I really wanted to ruin things for him. I wanted to make it so his life would be difficult from that day forward as punishment for cheating on me with my mother. For this, it really came in the form of his financial situation and how much of it was connected with me. My husband did construction by trade, but instead of working for a big company, he opted to be more of his own boss. He was great at building, but horrible when it came to anything else, and that included academics and by extension math and taxes. I handled everything with his work when it came to money. That included taxes and filing things correctly. Now, working as his own boss, he had some customers that were willing to pay him cash and then he just would not claim it. He was working off the books basically and then in turn reporting less of his income. We filed separately despite being married too, so his taxes were fully on him and nobody else. Of course, with me gone, he had no idea how to do any of this, but that's unrelated. So anyway, I had all the paperwork for jobs that he had done and taken the money for off the books. I decided to compile it all nice with a figurative bow and send it right to the IRS. I knew that they contacted him a few months later because I started getting frantic messages from him begging to help, sending me screenshots of what they sent him and confusion on how to fix it. He owed them like 10 grand and was freaking out. The babies were due at that point in like 2 months and he was spending all of his money towards things for that. I told him that he could go screw himself and good luck dealing with the IRS. Due to all of this, his contracting license also got pulled, so he lost his entire career and would need to find another job. With no education, the choices were limited and paid horribly. By the time the babies were born, both of them were miserable and had nothing else in their lives. They did not even have each other at that point because of all their anger and fighting got directed towards each other. So they both ended up being divorced and having to raise triplets with nobody supporting them. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I feel like that the awful mother and the awful husband kind of got what they deserved, but in the end I would have hoped that they would have gotten even more. What they did is honestly outrageous because they destroyed 2 families in one, to be honest, so I can only wish the worst for them. But either way, if you like the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much. The next one is titled, "Please report me to corporate." I used to work for a car rental company. I won't say which, but the name accurately describes the employees' daily experience working for them. During my time, the company continuously changed policies regarding debit cards for the rental because of the large amount of fraudulent transactions associated with them. This caused so much drama with customers, in particular with return customers who had not been in since the policy change. So, around the end of each school year, many people rent minivans or SUVs to pick up their kit and a bunch of their stuff from college. I had one such customer who did not qualify for the rental vehicle she reserved. Per my training, I was not allowed to rent anything larger than a sedan because she didn't have a credit card. When I informed her that I could only give her a Hyundai Elantra, she became enraged. She stated that the previous year she was able to rent a minivan under a debit card, and I informed her that policy had changed since then. She refused to acknowledge that I was doing my job properly, and I repeated company policy multiple times and did my best to inform her that I was doing the best I could with the current situation. However, she refused any attempt I made to placate her. My manager eventually stepped in and he broke down and did the rental for an SUV against company policy. The entitled woman smirked at me and pushed a stack of post-it notes that was on the counter in front of me. She said, "You should not be in customer service, and I'm gonna report you to corporate. I want you to write your name on this paper." Without missing a beat, I took the pad and wrote the words, "Your name," on the top sheet, ripped it off and handed it to her. Apparently, she did not notice until she was in the parking lot with my manager and her husband to inspect the vehicle. When my manager came back in the office, he said, "Her husband, who stood silently behind his raging wife throughout the whole interaction, wants me to write you up because you didn't give them your real name." Then he started laughing and said, "But I'm not gonna do anything because you followed company policy and you did exactly what that witch asked you to do." She gave us a horrible survey and it tanked our bonus for that quarter, but it was totally worth it to put that rude woman in her place. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would say putting entitled people in their place is basically doing a service to humanity, because if no one would do that, then Kevins and Karens and all these entitled people would just never stop doing what they do. At some point, someone has to show them what's right. Neighbor throws a pool party on my property. I get epic IRS revenge. My neighbor and I are on what you might call opposite ends of the spectrum. I spent 35 years working very hard and saving money before getting to retire. It was difficult, but I am grateful that with my good pension and decision-making skills financially, I am able to have a nice house that even has a pool in the backyard. It is the kind of life that I dreamed of having after living with my parents and 3 siblings in a 1-bedroom apartment growing up. It was basically the goal, and I love the fact that I was able to achieve that. My neighbor, though, seems like a different type of guy. He seems to be a little bit younger than me, but has the mentality of wanting to get rich quick and blow the money he has right away. I will say that despite not liking the neighbor, I actually know quite a bit about him because he likes to talk a lot and brag. I don't know what his business actually is, but I do know that once he told me that he knows a way to get around paying taxes for his business, and if he wants, he can help look at my finances and see if he can get me out of them too. I declined very quickly because I did not want to get in trouble for not paying my taxes. It was easier to just pay them like most people and get on with my life. He also on a few occasions asked if I was interested in buying any of the drugs that he was selling. I never knew much about drug dealers, but I was always under the impression that they were supposed to lay low and not tell people they were selling them. Between those things, I could have made some calls and got the guy in trouble already. He did not really seem like a bad guy though, maybe just a bit of an idiot that thought getting rich quick was possible. One thing that did rub me the wrong way was how obviously jealous he was about the fact that I had a pool. He has on many occasions been caught trying to come over to my backyard in his trunks and swim in my pool. I usually tell him to get out and he always just goes back to his yard. Again, it did not seem worth it to ever call the police and deal with the hassle. He did not fight me or try and start any fights, he would just leave. Many times he asked me if he could use my pool for a party he was hosting, and I always gave him a swift and firm no. He never pushed it either, so I could not get a read on what kind of guy he was, besides wanting to just get rich without working hard. I went away on a weekend trip to go and visit my son because his wife had just given birth. I was not worried about my property because it was a decent neighborhood and I had cameras installed in case anything went wrong. My son helped me set the whole thing up and even hooked it up to an app on my phone that would show me if there was anything crazy going on. The last night of my visit, my phone alerted me that there was motion detected in the backyard. I had this go off before and assumed it was another raccoon. Instead though, I saw a neighbor and a bunch of strangers throwing a crazy pool party when I was out of town. I could not really do anything about it and I did not want to call the police because I knew he would claim he had permission and I was not there to defend my side of the story. I waited until I got back the next day and saw that my entire pool area was trashed. Empty beer bottles and drugs littered the ground. The water was a weird color that probably meant alcohol was spilled in it without a care. Cups, plates, even oddly some clothing was all over the place. I made a police report and sent them the footage of the entire party that I had on my phone so they could see the drugs and such. This was really the final straw with the neighbor, and I was going to press charges on him for trespassing and destruction of property. He wanted to be rich, but after paying me to fix everything, I did not know if he would have much left. Since drugs were seen in the video, they got a warrant and found a ton of drugs in his house that they arrested him for too. Along with another charge for intent to sell the drugs to other people, I think the trespassing was the smallest thing on his mind after that, but I did not forget. I decided to make a call to the IRS and let them know that neighbor had been bragging about his business getting away without paying any taxes and they should look into that. Now he had them on his back as well, and my favorite part of the story is about to come up. Basically what happened to a guy who had this many people coming after him with all of these crimes, I'm going to break it down for you and start with the drug charges since they were the most serious. He had no way to defend himself because the evidence was literally in his house and he was found guilty of that. They also found him guilty of trespassing due to the video. Now, the damages that I was asking for had to be done separately since it was not criminal behavior. After seeing the video and more detailed pictures I took of the aftermath, they said that he was going to have to pay me the money to drain and refill my pool and clean the surrounding area. The exact amount for that is not known yet because we are still working out those fine details. Now we come to the part where the IRS is coming after the neighbor and his business that was found to not have paid taxes since the business started 5 years ago. He actually did something worse than simply not paying his taxes. I guess he was worried about getting caught by just doing it that way, so instead he was writing off all his business taxes by making large donations to charity. Looking into that charity though only found it going into another business account in his name that seemed to only be getting those large donations to get the first one out of paying taxes. It was a really bad plan and they saw through it right away. His business got shut down and his license to start another business was probably never going to happen. I was not told how long, but due to all the charges, he was going to have to spend some time in jail. Now, the guy that wanted to get rich without working and stealing my pool is poor and in jail. I'm not saying that he should have lived his life the way I did at all. I am saying though that if you try to get a lot of money by doing shady and illegal things, you should not be surprised at possibly ending up in jail. Maybe he will learn a thing or two and come out as a better person. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.